What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Thinking Cap. I'm Beck Moore, CEO of Community Action Association of Pennsylvania. With me is my fellow fearless leader, Heather Holloway, Holloway Media Services. Heather, what's up?
Oh my gosh, you're so sweet. Everything is up, nothing's down. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much.
Of course. So we are so excited to have our next guest today, Dr. Vanessa Shannon, who I got to meet a few months ago at our executive leadership meeting. So we were just chatting before we started our recording this afternoon, but going to refer to you as Vanessa because that's how I've gotten to know you. It's how some of our executive leaders have gotten to know you. So just want to acknowledge that you have done all of the work to get the title of doctor, but because we know each other, I'm going to call you Vanessa. And I just want to acknowledge that out loud in case any of our listeners thinks that I'm just being a big old jerk, which hopefully they wouldn't think.
Never.
I can't imagine.
But so thank you so much for being here. We're happy to have you.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely. So Heather, before we officially get started, can you share with our listeners a little bit about Vanessa and her work?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. Dr. Vanessa Shannon is a certified mental performance consultant with 20 years of experience, though you would never see it. She looks like she's 21. Before transitioning into private consulting, she held full-time positions as a mental conditioning coach at IMG Academy, the director of mental performance for the University of Louisville Athletic Department. Go Cardinals!
Yes.
Louisville? Yeah. And the director of mental performance and Major League AAA mental performance coach for the Cincinnati Reds. Dr. Shannon earned a PhD in education with a specialization in performance psychology from the University of Tennessee, Go Vols, and takes a science-backed psychoeducational approach to her work with clients. She's been invited to speak to teams, organizations, and universities across North America, throughout Europe, and in Africa on topics from motivation, confidence, and resilience to building and sustaining culture. Applying her experience working in elite level performance and using evidence-based strategies, Dr. Vanessa Shannon teaches individuals and organizations how to minimize disruption, maximize potential and work, and optimize performance, which is what we're here to talk about. So here we are.
I had the great opportunity to meet Vanessa at a healthcare conference in New Orleans last spring. And we'll just say that, got the opportunity to listen to her speak on that stage and knew that there was an opportunity to bring her to our executive leaders who were just our feeling, I think. And if I'm putting words in people's mouths, call me out via email, please, folks. But I think what I really have heard is just this exhaustion right now within the nonprofit space. And so brought her to come and speak and had a really great opportunity to just learn more about her background. And so I know that hopefully people will leave here the same way that they left that executive session, just feeling rejuvenated, no pressure at all, Vanessa. But it was a great session and we had remarkable feedback, but appreciate you being back with us again. And I'm just curious before we jump into the thick of things, an amazing bio. I think we've talked about this. I hate having my bio read. I think you hate having your bio read as well.
Hate it.
But
if Heather were to read it every time, I'd be okay.
Look, that's why we are co-hosts here, because I think the energy she brings to certain things that I just could never bring. But I think this speaks to kind of the topic of today, right, which is imposter syndrome. And I know for me, I really hate my bio being read because it just feels, I don't know. I feel uncomfortable. We've done all these things. We've earned all these things, but for whatever reason, it just makes me feel uncomfortable. But we're going to dig into that a little bit. But I do have a very, very first question for you officially is, what was your very first job? This is one of my favorite icebreaker questions. Very, very first job. Just curious.
Job being defined as something I was paid to do, not volunteer.
Yeah, it could be like paid, like just under the table, something like that. But yeah, paid. I think paid.
My first job was actually my dad's office. He was a pediatrician for over 45 years by the time he retired. And I worked in his office. I filed files. Everyone remembers before we had electronic files and digital files, we had hard files. So I did a lot of filing. And then for a period of time, I put charts in front of rooms so that doctors would know, what patient they were about to walk into. But one of my dad's partners claimed that I messed that job up one day, screamed at me. And I told my dad I would stay in the back and file and never come out again. So that was my first job. Yeah. And I didn't get paid enough to get yelled at.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about workplace PTSD on prior episodes of the Thinking Cap, so that fits really well with all of the different things that some of us have experienced. I also worked in my mom's office for a little while. One of my favorite things to do when I really didn't have much to do was to take, you remember like the notes that you would leave on somebody's desk when somebody called?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
the memo notes.
Yeah, we're all aging ourselves right now. But I would white out to make it sound funnier than what it was, and like would photocopy it and then like leave those on people's desks. I never got yelled at, but I did,
Oh, that's amazing.
And I photocopied a lot and filed a lot of files. So I feel
I love that. You got to find the joy.
Yeah.
Have to.
So what I'd love to just start with really officially is, can you tell us a little bit about your journey and what really drew you into this role of performance management, performance psychology?
Yeah. I've always been curious about peak performance and what allows some people to thrive under pressure and while others struggle, even when their skills or quote unquote talent level are equal. And I think that curiosity started, even growing up as a junior athlete for me, and then continued to develop as I was a collegiate athlete, where I saw firsthand, sometimes myself, being the data point, how much psychological skills could really impact performance. And I was very lucky. My father, who I mentioned earlier, as a pediatrician, really understood adolescent development. And one of his close friends happened to be a psychologist who also played for the Harlem Globetrotters at one point in his career. And so he started bringing me to lunch with Dr. Pugh. And I just thought we were going to lunch with Dr. Pugh, but really he was my sports psychologist. And so then a pivotal moment for me in terms of pursuing performance psychology as a career happened in college, where I was taking a coaching baseball class. That is a true story. There is a class called Coaching Baseball. It was an elective, and a gentleman named Dr. Jack Llewellyn, who did some work with the Atlanta Braves, came and spoke to my class. And that was the first time I realized, like, wow, that could be a job.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I came to it.
Look, I took archery and mountain biking in college. So if that can be a class, coaching baseball should be a class.
Oh my gosh. I wish I would have met you 20 years ago, because coaching baseball would have been amazing. I have so many questions. Number one, what did you play?
I was going to ask this question too. Yeah.
In college, I played volleyball. Growing up, I played everything. I did gymnastics. I swam. I played soccer and volleyball at a competitive level in high school. I had the opportunity to play both in college, decided to play volleyball.
Nice.
Heather, did you play softball, Heather? Is that what you played?
Yeah, I played softball. I played basketball for 1 year, but had a bad experience with a coach, so I quit.
Yeah.
Played the alley ball, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Perfecting my fadeaway jumper. But I would tell you, the Harlem Globetrotters taught me how to spin a basketball on my finger.
As I feel like they did a lot of young basketball players.
Yeah.
Of our generation.
Yeah.
Of our generation, right? Yeah. I still think they're out there doing the thing.
They are. I saw them right before COVID, I think. And I had always wanted to see them. It was very cool. I grew up with a basketball family. I played basketball not well. It was just because I was tall. And I also had a terrible experience with a coach. Basically had to run laps until we threw up. And you didn't stop unless you had to throw up. There was buckets around the gym, and it was, a terrible experience.
That's encouraging.
I know, right? Yeah, let's do this. Go team. Let's throw up together. The team that throws up together stays together. So
I'm going to make a bumper sticker that says that.
We're going to make some t-shirts very soon.
We throw up championships. Okay, we have gone.
We're making t-shirts for the podcast. If you're coming to the conference, if this recording drops before conference, maybe this will appear on one of our t-shirts. Stay tuned. At our CAAP store coming near you soon. So help us understand a little bit about kind of what your job means in the day-to-day. Like, plain language, what does a mental performance consultant really do on the day-to-day? I'm sure people are like, what is this? I've never heard of this.
100%. Yeah. I get asked this question a lot, and I feel like I've given 20 different answers, and typically people are still staring at me blankly. So as I explain it, if any of the listeners go, you know what? I think I have a really great elevator pitch for what she does. Please email me and let me know. Most recently, I think what I realized is I help individuals and organizations maximize the potential of human capital, right? And how I do that is optimal performance in any environment, whether it's sports, business, human services, always requires four things, right? Some type of physical capacity, some type of technical skills, some tactical understanding, and then psychological skills. And where most people devote plenty of energy to physical capacity and technical skills and tactical understanding, most people don't actually know how to train up their psychological skills. If we use human service professionals as an example, most human service professionals have little to no formal training in what's actually the skills required to meet the demands of the performance environment. They have technical skills out the wazoo. Is that an expression I can use?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. No. Wazoo is an official. Wazoo is an official fantastic word. It's also probably going to appear on a t-shirt.
I was just going to say it. Now it's on the t-shirt.
Second t-shirt. But they haven't been trained to manage the mental and emotional demands in a high stress, high consequence environment. So that's where individuals like myself come in. My role is to help people intentionally, systematically train up or level up their psychological skills using evidence-based tools and strategies.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're speaking to is part of the reason why this podcast was born. You know, our purpose is really to help serve the professionals within community action, bringing speakers like yourself. It's part of why we brought you right to our convening, and it's part of why, you know, when I think about the training and technical assistance that CAAP provides, what you're talking about is, I think, a cornerstone of what, you know, we're really trying to think about on a day to day, because it's they have hard jobs, you know, and I think understanding some things about like what fills your cup, how to continue to fill your cup, how do you prepare when your cup's not filled and there is no end in sight to when the cup's going to get filled, how do I keep going? It's a hard thing to figure out, for sure. It's funny, as a team, and Heather, I know we've sort of talked about this at different times. I am somebody who thrives under pressure. I don't want a script. If you give me a script, I'm going to panic. I'm going to be terrible. Put me on the fly on a stage, I'm going to feel so much better. You know, I say that procrastination is a little bit of my superpower. It makes me better. I don't know what that says about me. You can unbox that later, but we'll just say that out loud. I know if Erica's listening, my director of operations, it stresses her out because she's like, Beck, where's the script? Where's the run a show? And I'm like, I don't want to run a show. Give me some bullet points or some points to hit in my talk and I'll be good. But if you give me a script, I'm just going to like get really uncomfortable.
Yeah, I happen to love scripts. I love scripts. I love to go live too. So I think we need to come back just a wee bit. For those following at home, they may not know what imposter syndrome is. So I was wondering, Vanessa, could you give us, you know, like the fifth grader's definition of imposter syndrome? How can we understand this?
Yeah, it's sort of this constant belief that our success is due to factors outside of ourselves, rather than our own competence, right?
I love that. I love that definition. I don't want to interrupt, but I love that definition so much. It's perfect. I've never heard anybody describe it that way.
Yeah, and then the attached fear that eventually will kind of be found out, right?
Yes.
Someone else is responsible for my success, and eventually the whole world's going to figure that out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That's it.
I was at an event and there was someone who really high position. I'm not going to say who this person was because I don't want to call them out. I've not asked their permission, but really high up position in a large company. And I was asked to speak on this panel with this person. They were the moderator. And I said afterwards, I was like, did I hit the mark? Was this what you were really looking for? And she said, yes, absolutely. I said, good. Because I find myself sometimes standing in front of people, just sort of like thinking to myself as I'm speaking, it's sort of an out of body experience. Like, I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know why anyone's listening. I don't know the words that are coming out. Somehow I'm shining this on pretty good. Hopefully nobody asks a hard question because I don't know what I'm saying. Hopefully it's all okay.
Yes, I have loss of time during speaking engagements. Like just it's at the end and I'm like, I have no clue if I just said what I was supposed to say. So I get that very much. Well,
and I don't know about Heather, you or Janet or Vanessa, you, but I also I will tell people, right, like, I don't care who you are when you're standing on a stage, everybody gets a little bit nervous. That's regular. That's normal, right? Whatever normal is, but that's normal. For me, like, I get really sweaty. I get a little shaky. I hate a hand mic because I know that I'm shaking. And as much as I will try to calm myself down and do all the deep breathing exercises ahead of time, that's how my stress manifests itself. So I can only wear a suit like once or twice because it's smelly after that.
It's over.
Yeah.
Mine is, I get dry mouth and I already have allergies and take a bunch of antihistamines anyway, so it's not helpful. So I'm usually up there like chugging water. And I try and kind of overhydrate ahead of time. But then we have the problem of like now in the middle of my talk, I need to, sorry, can we take a 5-minute break so I can go to the restroom?
Yes,
so
yes. Suddenly all the moisture has been sucked out of the room and has been placed, and I need to use the bathroom.
Yeah. I know with imposter syndrome for me, by the way, I didn't even know what that I didn't even know existed. Imposter syndrome. I didn't know the words. I didn't understand what it was. As a first generation entrepreneur, not knowing what I don't know, a lot of imposter syndrome came up, and it was like 2020 when I learned imposter syndrome, what that meant. And then I went off on a course to understand what this is so that I can conquer it, because I would show up on sales calls and be this meek, you know me. We're best friends now, Vanessa. You know me. We've been talking for 20 minutes.
Right.
I'd be a shell of myself. I'd be like, because I think the other person's like, oh, you never ran a business before. Also, you're calling yourself a marketing expert, are you? You know, and I have all these things in my head like, oh, but you know, I'm just now getting into this. So I'm telling myself all these stories, and it just kept me small. So I'm curious, Vanessa, with your, consulting and working for the MLB, what kind of imposter syndrome did you face?
Oh man, I feel like I face imposter syndrome on the weekly. I am now a solopreneur for the first time in my career. But I spent the first part of my career in academia. And I think any faculty member, any professor that stands up in front of a classroom at some point leaves the class and goes, did they believe anything I said, or was any of it accurate? You go back to your office and you grab textbooks and you're like, that's what the textbook said, right? So I experienced it in that space. And then after 8 years of doing that, I transitioned into consulting. And so now, rather than teaching people how to do the consulting, I was doing the consulting, and yeah, same type of thing, right? I'm going like, what am I doing here? Nobody's going to believe me. I'm too old. I was working at IMG Academy with high schoolers. I'm like, they can't connect to me. I'm in my 30s. And then got to Louisville and was like, oh, I've really fooled everyone. It's worked, right? Like it's fully worked. I've fooled everyone. I've gotten what I've wanted. I'm in the job I thought I wanted in Division I athletics, high level collegiate athletics. And then you're sitting there paranoid and kind of paralyzed because you're going, wow, if somebody finds out now, it's going to be really bad. It might happen on TV, on the sideline or something of a game. So then fast forward after 7 years, I decide to walk myself into a major league clubhouse. And I would say, I always say I had a cup of coffee in Major League Baseball. That's what you say to people who have short-lived careers in Major League Baseball. But the first time I walked into the clubhouse at the Reds, I told my bosses there, I said, I'm not going to say anything to anyone. I'm just going to walk into their space and kind of allow connections to happen, because it's so overwhelming. And you think to yourself, like, what are you doing here? How did you even get here? And who's going to figure out that you don't belong? So I've certainly experienced imposter syndrome throughout my career. And I think I've learned how to normalize it, because it is normal. The doubt is normal. And that helps me fend it off pretty persistently.
What are some of the ways, I think, I've shared a couple experiences that I've had in terms of how it sort of manifests with me, but what are the other ways in which you see people manifest this, both in sort of the psychological side, right, the mental side and the physical side?
So we could do kind of a podcast on nervous system and understanding our nervous system and how it responds to different environments. But it depends on the individual, of course, how their sympathetic nervous system is going to perceive a threat. And when we think we don't have the resources to meet the demands of the environment, that's exactly how we experience that. We experience it as a threat. We want to experience it as a challenge. That's how we overcome it. But viscerally, initially, we experience it as a threat. So for some people, it's sweaty palms, shaky hands, the pit in the stomach that occurs, which is actually a real physiological thing that's occurring because of what your body is doing to prepare itself for battle in that moment. As I mentioned, for me, it's dry mouth. For other people, they can feel like they've got blurry vision. All sorts of things can happen. The typical racing heart, shortness of breath, etc. From a psychological perspective or a mental perspective, what starts to happen is sort of protection mode of, okay, what do I do here? And one would think that, okay, maybe the response is to kind of like double down on your strengths and just focus on your resources. But typically that's not what happens. Typically in the face of it, while it's occurring, imposter syndrome, sort of as Heather alluded to, just makes us kind of withdraw, right? Like I'm going to make myself small and less noticeable. And then it's less likely that people are going to find me out.
Yeah. Too much information for all the listeners, but nervous bathroom breaks.
Yeah.
That belly pit.
It happens.
Yeah. Like I gotta go.
That's right.
Yeah.
I gotta go.
Right.
Yeah. What, Vanessa, I'm so curious about this. You spent a lot of time in sports, but I saw from your website, you don't just speak to athletes, you speak to healthcare professionals and a whole bunch more, teachers, parents. So I'm curious for the mission-driven professionals listening today. We talked, for sports, that might come up when you go to bat, right? Or catch a ball, or be the quarterback, or be the coach. But for a mission-driven professional, somebody in social work, how do you think imposter syndrome shows up for them in their day-to-day?
Oh, I mean, I think it shows up in many ways, right? It can show up in conversations. It can show up in decision-making. It can show up at times when anytime that there is a high stake, high consequence, right? We're going to start to worry that we don't have the resources to meet the demands of the situation. Ironically, the demands are really determined by us more than anyone else. But I think any of those situations, and when you take human services professionals and individuals who are in the service of others, I think the imposter syndrome only intensifies. Because the failure is, you're responsible for it if it happens, but it affects other people. And so as a consequence, I think it just magnifies and intensifies people's experience of imposter syndrome.
Yeah. Yeah. I think with our executive directors, and I feel this from a different perspective because we don't do direct client services, but I'm worried about my team. I'm worried about my team's interaction with clients. I'm worried about clients. And if I fail in any one of those levels, it all unravels. And then you add the board pressure and the funding pressures in there. And there's all of these types of pressures. And if you're already experiencing that you can't handle it, you feel this, insurmountable mountain of worry. And want to acknowledge right now for a lot of people in human services space, because of the nature of funding challenges, this is just, it's even magnified more. And so I think as we kind of talk, right, what are some of the strategies? And when you came to our executive leadership meeting, you talked about some of these. What are some of the strategies that come to mind for folks that are managing these feelings, maybe particularly before a big moment, big presentation? Maybe it's a big funding meeting. Maybe it's a board meeting. Maybe it's a team meeting. I've got to deliver some unfortunate news to my team. Whatever the scenario is, what are some of those tricks that you might suggest to folks?
I think, I want to start by saying a lot of these are going to sound simple. And I think sometimes when we hear simple solutions, we assume like, well, that can't be it. because we're talking about something that feels so uncomfortable for us. We think it must be some massive overhaul that has to happen. But the truth is, it starts with simply acknowledging what's happening, right? It starts with our willingness to kind of have the awareness. Okay, I'm feeling some kind of way right now. That is normal given the circumstances. Anyone in my situation would feel that way. So there's kind of an acknowledgement, and then an acceptance, and then an adjustment, right? And the adjustment, I think, is addressing the core, the foundational kind of piece of it, which is your nervous system. So I think starting by grounding yourself, and I will kind of just leave it at that, because that looks different for different people. For some people, that is using a noting strategy, right? I'm going to acknowledge 3 things I see, 2 things I hear, 1 thing I feel. For some people, that's using some box breathing. So that could be a 3-second inhale, a 3-second hold, a 3-second exhale, and a 3-second hold. And so being able to ground yourself, return yourself to the present moment. There was a Chinese philosopher, Lao Tzu, and he said something, I'm going to paraphrase here, so don't put quotes around this, but basically said, if you're angry or regretting, you're in the past. If you're anxious or worried, you're in the future. If you're at peace, you're in the present. So I think so much of it begins with grounding yourself in the present moment. When you're in imposter syndrome, you may have to continue to fight that battle and return to the present moment, and over. So what can happen when we use those grounding techniques is people assume they're not working because they keep getting pulled into the future in the worry, or they keep getting pushed into the past and the one time they made a mistake and the one piece of evidence they have to support that they're not good enough or skilled enough or whatever it is. So remembering it's the battle of continually returning to the present moment, grounding yourself back in the present moment.
Ooh, you're speaking my language.
We were taking a walk the other day, and I kept sighing, and my wife's like, why are you sighing? I was like, it's good for you. I don't know who told me, but I think it was you, Vanessa. I was like, sighing releases, releases all this energy, like it lets go of things. So I'm trying to let it all go.
Exhale.
Right. Yeah, I'm sitting right now as we're recording this, and every day I have a grounding mat below me. And I don't have socks on. In the winter, I will put socks on, but I have my bare feet on this grounding mat. I gave a grounding mat to every team member, because before we get on a call, we must, let's center ourselves. Let's take a couple deep breaths. I know something that worked for me as I was overcoming this imposter syndrome. And yes, I still have little bits of it that show up, but something that I did in the gym on the treadmill is look in the mirror and say to myself over and over again until I believed it, 3 words: why not you? And so that's one technique. Listen, you're believing the stories of limitation. What if you believe the stories of possibility? So then my next question, Vanessa, would be true or false? Imposter syndrome is bad.
So that's a tricky question, right? Because it's a bit of a double-edged sword. On one hand, those limiting beliefs that we're talking about that are persistent when it comes to imposter syndrome are limiting us. They're exactly what they sound like. And they are preventing us from maximizing our potential and ultimately optimizing our performance. However, I think there's a lot of people who are driven kind of by that doubt to continue to shore up their resources. And so certainly we can get into a space where if we are overly confident or unnecessarily confident and certain in our beliefs, we can get into a lot of trouble. Because at the end of the day, when we think about how much control we actually have of the outcome, the demand, the situation, it's really very little, right? So if we get into a space where we're like, oh, I'm good, it's like, are you? Because there's still some uncertainty that we're going to have to battle at some point. So I think we want to be in a space where we recognize we don't control everything And then we also simultaneously want to be in a space where we recognize that we should be confident and have belief in our ability to control what we can control.
Yeah, yes. I mean, I think we coach through a lot of things and talk about a lot of management coaching at CAAP. And so I think scope of control, there's only so many things that you can deal with. I know, and like when we do walkthroughs after our large events, I'll say to the team, right, like there's only so many things that we're within the scope of our control. We can't, we did our best to plan the menu in a way that we knew that people would like, but if the food was bad, the cook had a bad day, like that's not within the scope of our control. Can we change the venue? Sure. But there's scope of control. And then I think this healthy balance of ego and vulnerability as a leader is so important. And for me, to your point, I will say that I am somebody, you tell me I can't do something, I'm going to work 1,000 times harder to prove you wrong. Because that's just the way I'm built. But I'm always going to be humble and thoughtful about it. And I think with leadership, we talk about this a lot. We've had a lot of speakers come and talk about this, that vulnerability that you have to show as a leader. If you're driven completely by ego, there's no room for vulnerability then. And then the culture that you create. So I want to ask a follow-up question with respect to culture then. What do you think, or how do you think, I guess, can supervisors, leaders, managers, however you want to categorize folks, create environments that help reduce imposter syndrome within teams? What's core to that?
I think two kind of core pieces. One is what you were speaking to, Beck, which is the idea of leaders being vulnerable and taking ownership of their experiences with things, right? So we want to normalize a conversation around self-doubt. Well, if I'm a leader and I'm at the front of the room and I'm sitting there going, that's normal for you guys. It's normal, and acting like it's not normal for me, then are you actually going to ever want to acknowledge that it's normal for you? So I think it starts with leaders recognizing that you can remain credible while being vulnerable. There definitely was a long time where in leadership, we saw leaders refusing to be vulnerable because they thought that would affect their credibility. But what people want is authenticity. So as a leader, if you're going to approach your team with a conversation about normalizing self-doubt, you better be willing to begin it by talking about a time that you experienced self-doubt. So right there, you're putting yourself in the conversation, you're co-creating that discussion, you're not leading the discussion, you're becoming part of the discussion.
Yeah, 1,000%. So Vanessa, I know you live in Kentucky, and as a former Kentucky person and recovering Southern Baptist, I'm going to say hallelujah, amen.
Yes.
I feel that all day long,
Took us to church.
All right, I can't.
By the way, I think we got another T-shirt slogan.
I know.
With the vulnerability, yeah.
As soon as she said it, I was like, "Ooh, I think that's T-shirt number 3."
Collect the whole set when you get to conference. I love on your website again, resistance2disruption.com, quote by John Kabat-Zinn: "You can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf." I love that so much. I also love his book, Wherever You Go, There You Are. Huge book for me. Yeah. So tell me about this quote.
Yeah, that quote is really my personal mantra or affirmation. I should probably pay him royalties daily every time I ground myself with that quote. I grew up in Southern California. I am not a proficient surfer, but I grew up around the ocean. And that quote was shared with me actually when I was in the midst of my academic career by one of my colleagues, Dr. Ed Etzel. And I was balancing being a faculty member and teaching and also doing some service work with some of the teams at West Virginia and having a moment. My mom had been diagnosed with dementia. I was in a near fatal car accident. My dad was 6 months later. I was just a bit of a mess. And he always kind of did this thing where he moved his fingers like this. He's still alive, but he's retired now. And he kind of, I could tell he was coming up with something. And then he just pointed at his wall. And it was actually this quote. And he said, "I feel like now would be a good time to surf," right? So it's been really relevant for me, I think, in terms of understanding my capacity and recognizing what is in my scope of control and what is external of it. and being able to always ground myself in that idea of I cannot stop the challenges and the waves. I can only control what I can control.
Yeah, there was my therapist, I remember years ago, I was going to therapy dealing with a really hard situation. And I remember my therapist saying, when you're on a boat and you feel seasick, what do you do? I was like, I don't know. You stand up, you don't sit down. I know that. He said, you watch the horizon because you can't control the waves. And so when you're trying to control the environment, which you can't do, what does it feel like? It feels worse. You're trying to control the environment. Stop trying to control the environment. All you can do is keep your eye on the horizon and know what you're trying to accomplish. And you sort of got to roll with the waves, right? So same concept, different way of saying it. But I'd seen that quote before when we were researching a little bit more about you, potentially bringing you over to our conference before. But that's what I thought of when the moment that I read that quote was that moment with that therapist, and it has always stuck with me.
I love that articulation of it too, is that the horizon stays steady, right? So just kind of keep your eyes on the horizon. When I was at the University of Louisville, I'd travel with teams, and people would see me on planes with, a cardinal bird on, and they'd say, "Oh, are you a coach?" And I'd say, "I am." And they'd say, what do you coach? And I'd say, I'm a surf coach. And they'd look at me super confused. And it would either end the conversation or inspire the conversation to talk about that idea of, I teach people how to surf, how to ride those waves.
Yeah.
I mean, that's your elevator pitch. You just came,
right.
You just got it. Yeah.
True. I want to go back to something that you shared with us a little bit at conference. There was a story about coloring books. Do you remember that story? Would you mind sharing that with our audience? Because I think it's inspired something that we're going to be doing at our conference. And I believe, listeners hold me accountable, but I'm fairly certain that this episode's dropping right as people are coming off of our conference. And so there's a swag item that we gave people that was inspired by this story.
Amazing. Yeah. So the short of the story is I was trying to engage our players in being more mindful because, as you can imagine, if you want to develop psychological skills, a lot of the tools and strategies are based on self-awareness and self-regulation. So if I know what I'm thinking, I can change what I'm thinking. If I know how I'm feeling, I can regulate how I'm feeling. And so the foundation of that is really being in the present moment as much as you can. So that you can acknowledge it as quickly as possible. You have that self-awareness. So, there's meditation apps, mindfulness training you can do. Those can be fantastic for people, but I wanted to find something that might be a little bit more creative. So I went and bought a bunch of coloring books and colored pencils, and I walked into the clubhouse and I walked past our sports medicine staff, and they said, "What do you have?" And I told them, and they kind of laughed and giggled. And I walked past our strength and conditioning staff, and they said, "What do you have?" And I told them, and they kind of laughed and giggled. And then I went to my office, and it's a true story that by the end of the day, I had to kick about 5 players out of my office and tell them they had to go somewhere else to do their coloring. And I had 2 guys come by really quietly and ask for coloring books and colored pencils that they wanted to put in their bag. And I had one player actually come by and ask me, he said, "I know I can get it myself, but would you get me a Disney princess coloring book? Because I would love to practice mindfulness with my daughter." And this is a totally true story. I can't name names, but it's a totally true story. And so coloring in art therapy research, specifically coloring geometric shapes, mandalas, things like that, has been shown to reduce feelings of anxiety. And so the belief is that when we shift to the creative side of our brain and we sort of detach from the analytical side of our brain, we're down regulating our nervous system, and it's allowing us an opportunity to recover, to kind of engage our parasympathetic nervous system.
Yeah. This is so for our listeners who were at our conference, in our swag bags, everybody got a coloring book and coloring and colored pencils, so that while you're at the conference, you can, if you want to listen to the speaker, sure, I hope you do. We're paying some folks to be there, so we hope you listen. But also, just to take the time, right? We want to make sure that our conference is a place that people can rejuvenate. They can feel, reconnected to the work. And so this story has inspired us to do that. And I'm really excited to be able to. We do give a good swag bag at our conference, and I'm happy to be able to provide those. But it's something that I've spent some time doing in the last year in particular, dealing with some hard situations. It's a really detailed mandala coloring book, color with my son, color with my daughter, or just color by myself at night before I go to bed. It just helps to disconnect a little bit and breathe some life back into me.
That's fantastic.
I really think we're onto something here, kids, because all we did was shift the horizon. The coloring book now became the horizon, right? We're focusing on it. I'm looking right now at my Nightmare Before Christmas coloring book that I have. It was a word search, and then you could color and I had a beautiful experience finding the colored pencils. Like the whole thing was just pure joy for me. Supporting a pencil company out in California. I think they're Black owned, and they give funds to schools and provide money for art programs. So it goes even deeper than that. So Beck, thanks for providing that for the amazing superheroes at conference.
Yeah, no one thanks to the team yes, I love it.
By the way, we live in the great state of Pennsylvania. That is the snack capital of the world, and Crayola.
Right, Crayola. Crayola, if you're listening, feel free to call us. We're going to be calling you to help sponsor this podcast.
That's right. We'll take you.
So, Vanessa, what do you do to sort of refill your cup? What are the things? I mean, I see you have colored for our listeners. She just shared her colored pencils, but anything that you do beyond, I'm going to assume coloring, but what else do you do?
I do mindfulness training. I've talked about my struggles with that in the past. When I use it with my clients, if I listen to a meditation and they say something that I feel like is really powerful, I typically get distracted in my mindfulness practice. I'm like, I got to write that down. So I use it somewhat sparingly. I do color. I do a lot of mindful walking, just like out in our yard. I love to be outside. And so just the opportunity to just go out onto our back deck and just kind of notice, listen, observe. We have a bunch of high trees in our neighbor's yard behind us, and there's a lot of wildlife there, lots of sounds to listen to, lots of things to see. So I do that as well. And then I try actually to practice, it's a little bit counterproductive, but kind of mindful driving. I was in as I mentioned earlier, a really serious car accident about 15 years ago. And I love music, but I get what they call earworms. So basically there's a soundtrack to my life. There's music happening at all times, which can be really disruptive to me. And I found that if I would turn everything off in the car and just drive instead, then I typically wasn't as disrupted by that soundtrack that was occurring in my mind. And so it gives me an opportunity to sort of continue to return to the present moment in my car and notice, listen, observe, and be more mindful and pay attention to driving.
It's interesting.
I would not suggest that, by the way, for extremely long trips. I once mentioned this to an athlete who then tried it for 3 hours straight from the top, driving home to see his parents, and was effectively crazy at the end of it. So, so short periods of time, short driving opportunities, good opportunity to practice mindfulness.
Yeah, I have a hard time. With complete quiet in the car. I feel like it's like a reverse earworm. I don't know how to describe it. It's like my brain starts just going. And somehow the ADHD is calmed by, it's like, it's okay. Quiets my brain, if I listen to the music. But same thing though with music, it's still, there's like, things that it takes you back to, etc. And Heather, just so you know, Vanessa shared some of the pictures of her accident and some of the stories that she went through in her recovery, and what a remarkable story that she has.
It was a wild experience. So I appreciate you acknowledging the remarkableness of it.
Yeah.
I was sitting here. I don't know the story yet. I'm excited to learn. But I'm looking at you. You would never know unless you told somebody. So I am just so grateful for our bodies and how they can come back. And I'm grateful that happened for you too. So it's incredible.
Thank you.
For me, usually like outside of coloring, I will ride my motorcycle. There's something about the air and feeling the air that just helps to ground me. Fishing, I think, because and these are all solitary activities. I've realized, and I'm not somebody who typically really likes to necessarily be alone, but there's something in the activity and the kind of silence of the activity. Even though riding a motorcycle is not quiet, it's just a constant rumble, right? That you kind of hear. I don't really listen to music when I ride. Fishing, occasionally video games, because I know Heather, this is going to bother you, but I like to blow some stuff up once in a while.
Doesn't bother me. It's a choice.
Or listening to music, coloring. Reading is hard. Lately, reading's really hard. It's something that I'm surrounded by books in my office, but reading is sometimes really hard for me anymore because I just can't quiet my brain while I'm reading.
I've actually found the same thing recently. I've attempted to remove myself from my typical environment because I'm like, maybe I just need to get out of the house. But I've noticed, as lovely as it makes the vibe, if you go to like a coffee shop, they're playing music. And so I can't read because I'm hearing other people's conversations and I'm hearing the music and then I feel like I'm reading the page over and over again. So that's a challenge for me. You mentioned fishing. If my brother listens to this, he will giggle a little bit because I am a amateur fly fisher woman. And by amateur, I mean, he has to do everything for me, including taking the fish off of the hook. But I love fly fishing. I've been probably 5 times in my life and it's so soothing for me. 100% renews my cup, my capacity. I think there's something, you're right about the silence, but also just kind of the rhythm of it. And the kind of low demand, high competency, simple tasks similar to coloring, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a big fan of fishing.
My wife took me fly fishing for the first time. I really wanted to try it. And I think it's an art form for sure. We went on a raft, so it was not the easiest experience. I think just like standing, I would try it again. I would totally try it again. We had a great time. We ended up switching to a spinner rod for fisher folks out there that are listening. Less complicated, but still had a great time. Anything fishing related, I'm in for. So I love that you're fly fishing. That's great. And I think it's a beautiful thing to watch.
It really is. Yeah. My brother is definitely more competent. But it is really cool to watch. Our dad used to fly fish. And so I think that's sort of where the foundational interest came from. But I've been in waders, waded in the river fly fishing. I've been on a boat. I've been on, a bank. So there's lots of ways to do it. It's cool.
Yeah. The other thing, and I think on a podcast episode with Megan Shreve, our board chair, we also talked about this, Heather. There's something about doing activities like home renovation projects. And I think the reason for that is because you see the progress of the thing. So like a lot of times our work, particularly in human services space, is you don't necessarily feel the change that you're creating. And so when you're doing a home reno project, right, like I'm redoing cabinets right now, I'm stripping down all the old paint back to the original hardwood, restaining, I've gone through more sandpaper than any human needs to. But you physically see the change in the thing that you are doing. And there's something sort of comforting and grounding about that as well.
Listen, we've been taught by the great philosopher, Mr. Miyagi, wax on, wax off. Yeah. That's where it's at, kids. That's where it's at. To ground myself, I go out in the garden. I'm middle-aged now. This is what we do.
Welcome to the plant phase of your life, friend.
This is it. And I love it. I adore every part of it. Seeing something grow and nurturing it is phenomenal. Feed the birds. I feed the bunnies. I take it all in. I love nature. I also, and then at the gym too, that's where I get in the flow and I zone out too and I ground myself. So I have a meditation practice. I do a whole thing. I teach people on this stuff. So I love all this. It's just horizons, guys. Find your horizon. Yeah. Gardening, fly fishing, whatever it is.
So one more question that I have, I know we're coming up here on time. I want to kind of get us back to human services professionals a little bit. What's the one piece of advice that you wish every human services professional could hear when it comes to really, I think, confidence and self-belief? I know we've talked about it a lot. We've talked about, ways to ground ourselves, all these things, but is there anything in particular that you really want our listeners to take away from this discussion?
I think the one piece of advice, if I had to stick to one, would be to remember that confidence is not the absence of doubt. It's the mastery of it. Right.
T-shirt.
Say it again.
Right. Yeah. Yes. I love that.
And I think ultimately that is, when I talk about confidence and I teach confidence and I talk about overcoming imposter syndrome, there are so many missteps that we make when it comes to confidence. I think the first misstep we make is the assumption that if we're experiencing doubt, that there's a inverse relationship between confidence and doubt. And so we must be not having confidence. But the truth of the matter is those two things can reside in the brain at the same time. And so there's a story, Beck, I think I shared it at the executive directors meeting. It was originally, I saw it as a proverb and then attributed to a old Cherokee legend. But the idea is that there's a grandfather teaching his grandson about life. And he says there's two wolves inside of all of us, and they're constantly battling. And one wolf is very sure, very certain, very resource skilled. The other wolf is anxious and worried and afraid of the fight. And when he's done saying that, the grandson says, which wolf wins? And he says, the one you feed, right? So ultimately remembering we have those two wolves, and it's not about killing the one wolf, right? We just need to kind of like turn down the volume on the doubt and raise the volume on the things that we're saying to ourselves. The one last thing I'll say about that is the most common misstep that we make when it comes to confidence is that one of the 4 ways that we earn confidence, if we think of it like a currency, is hearing. And in Albert Bandura's original theory of self-efficacy, it was about verbal persuasion. But who do we hear from most on the entire planet? Ourselves, right? And so really being aware of and regulating what we're saying to ourselves and the validity of the messages that we're sending to ourselves becomes really important in turning up the volume on the confidence and turning down the volume on the doubt.
Yes.
Mic drop.
I know. So I lied. I do have one more question.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I can't help myself.
No. Time's up.
I'll pay the bill. It's fine. Bill me. Erica, the bill's coming. I feel like right now there's a core group. It's not, and I want to make sure to preface, it's not about age. I think some people are going to hear me say this and they're going to say, oh, yes, age. And I really try to consider myself a bit of a generational agnostic. I have a real hard time with workplace generations. I feel like it perpetuates stereotypes. Anyway, that's another soapbox I could go off on. Anyway, but I think there's a core group of professionals right now that I hear when they enter a room and they feel this need to sort of assert, well, here are all the things that I've done. And to me, that is an immediate sort of like turn off in my brain. And I feel like there's a piece of advice here for professionals that are kind of trying to feel their way in. They walk into a room for the first time and they're trying to really assert themselves, right? Here's what I know. Here's why I belong in this room. What do you say to that group of folks who are really trying to assert themselves in that way, right? And it's like, okay, well, I'm going to give you my resume without, nobody's asking for your resume, but somehow you feel like you need to fill that space and say it.
Right.
What's a better approach?
I think a better approach is to recognize that when we're engaging with other people, like our greatest currency is our emotional intelligence. And a core of that is our self-awareness, right? We have to be emotionally intelligent about ourselves before we can be emotionally intelligent about other individuals. And so if you're going to walk into a room, remember that one of the greatest strengths that you can demonstrate is self-awareness. Someone who walks into a room and feels the need to convince other people of why they should be standing in front of them in that room or be in that room or have a voice in that room or a seat at that table is not necessarily recognizing the power of self-awareness, right? So better to walk into that room and through your actions and through the interactions that you have with the people in it, demonstrate your strengths and establish their trust in what you can bring to the table. And I mean, it's, it's old, but it works, right? Actions speak louder than words.
Yeah. Yeah. 1,000,000% for sure. All right. I'm going to go back to the quote that you said before, and I'm going to gut check that this is the quote. Confidence is not the absence of self-doubt. It's the mastery of doubt. Was that the first? Was that? Okay. All right.
Yep.
I'm putting it on a poster in my office. I feel like it needs to be on a t-shirt. Heather. Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Dr. Vanessa Shannon, doubt destroyer.
Yes. Doubt
I
destroyer.
don't know that you can attribute that quote to me because I don't know if I'm verifiably the first person who ever said it.
We'll do some deep.
You are on this podcast,
right? We're gonna do some deep. We're gonna do some deep googling.
We'll Google.
And doubt. What was it? What did you say, Heather? Doubt destroyer?
The doubt destroyer.
It's your new superhero status. So, eventually we'll have a superhero, little figurine. Yes. Just in case you're wondering. They'll hold a fishing rod in their hands.
Awesome. I was a huge Wonder Woman fan when I was young. I was very sad I didn't have dark hair like Linda Evans, but I always envisioned having those, those cuff bracelets you wore that deflected bullets. So in my doubt destroyer superhero, feel free to give me those.
Yes. Yeah. Wonder Woman has a whip. You have a fly rod.
A fly rod.
Golden fly rod. I love it.
Doubt destroyer. Vanessa, anything else you want to share with our audience this afternoon before we close out?
I mean, honestly, just thank you, like an expression of gratitude for the work that you do. I think that the job is unfortunately thankless. The amount of gratitude that you receive compared to the amount of energy and time that individuals in human services are investing in the livelihood of other individuals, communities, and systems is not proportional. So thank you for all of the work that you do.
Well, and really that goes to our agencies because I don't get to do that work. I simply get to provide them with folks like yourself to help them hopefully make their jobs a little bit easier and, feel blessed to be able to do that every single day. So thank you for being a part of our podcast. How can people get in touch with you if they hear this? They're like, you know what? I want to talk to Vanessa. I want to get to know her more. Tell us how we get in touch with you. Shameless plug here.
Oh, great. So I'm not great on social media, but I do have Instagram and I'm going to be better at it. It's at Dr. Headstrong, Dr. Headstrong. LinkedIn is honestly probably the most reliable way. I'm on LinkedIn. My Gmail, if you want to email me, is probably the most reliable. It's Vanessa R. Shannon at Gmail. I have a website, but for whatever reason, my email attached to my website right now keeps ending up in everyone's spam folders. So, so LinkedIn, I think, is the best way to get a hold of me. Or you can go to my website, www.resistancetodisruption.com, and you can send me a message via the website and I'll get it. There's a contact link and you can reach out and say hello. I'd love to hear from everyone.
Absolutely. And if you didn't get any of that, you could also, of course, email info@thecaap.org. We're happy to connect you. And just, as somebody who really loves to make connections with people, I know a really great social media marketing expert who can help with your online media presence. If you're looking for somebody, she may be on this podcast right now. Her name might be Heather. So happy to make that connection.
I'm not going to not say it's not me. And your message needs to be spread like butter everywhere. So not that it's not, but of course, yes. Yes. And also because I'm in marketing and I want to make this easy for the listeners, you can find every single link that she just said in the show notes.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Appreciate you again. So much gratitude for you joining us today. Thank you to our listeners. Thank you for putting on your thinking caps, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for being a part of this episode of The Thinking Cap. Check the show notes for resources and links to other episodes. And don't forget to subscribe and follow to be notified when new episodes are released. If you have any community action questions you'd like Beck or one of our local experts to answer in a future episode, please email your questions about community action to info@thecaap.org. Subject line, Thinking Cap.